If I could have everyone's attention this morning, I'll call this meeting to order. This is the October meeting of the Wilson County Board of Zoning Appeals. If you have a case on the agenda this morning and you would like to withdraw or have your case deferred to another meeting, we'll hear requests at this time. Also, we normally have a court recorder here to take a transcript of our meeting. Due to sickness, our normal court recorder is not available this morning and we could not get a replacement. If you feel like you'd like your case heard in front of a court recorder, we'll certainly understand that, and we'll also hear any request to withdraw on that basis. So does anyone wish to withdraw or defer their case to another meeting due to the absence of a court recorder or any other reason? And if there are none, then our agenda will remain as printed and advertised. Just a reminder to everyone, if you would please silence your cell phones. If you do have a case before the board this morning, or if you intend to make a statement before the board, you'll need to be sworn in. So at this time, I'll administer the oath to anyone who's going to speak in front of the board. So if you would please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in front of this board to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Right. Thank you. When we call each case, I'll read the case and the particulars. We'll get staff recommendations. Then we'll ask the applicant to come forward and make any statement to the board they'd like to make. And after the applicant has an opportunity to speak, we'll also hear from anyone else who wants to speak in support or in opposition to the case. As I mentioned, the staff has made recommendations to the board, and we will be considering those recommendations as we render our decision. Just a reminder to everyone, this meeting is being recorded and will be telecast and archived if you have any reason to view it at a later date. Each time we call a case, as I mentioned a few moments ago, we'll have a time for public comment by the applicant and by anyone else who wishes to address the case. The state has also mandated that before we begin our meeting, we must have a time for general public comment. So is there anyone, Mr. Brashear, that signed up for the general comment portion of the meeting?
I do not know of anyone. Of course, I've not checked the sheet. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak in the general comments section?
And again, you'll have the opportunity to speak to each case when those cases are called. So if there are none, we'll close the public comment period. To the members of the board, Mr. Neal chaired last month. I was absent, so you have all been given copies of the meeting minutes from the September meeting. Are there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes from the month of September? If not, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from September?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Neal, second by Ms. Robinson. Any discussion? And if not, all in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposition no. The ayes have it. Okay. Our first case is case 4123, David Heimbeck, requesting a variance from the road frontage requirement of 50 feet and a variance from the lot width requirement of 125 feet. The property is 100 feet in width. The variance will allow the applicant to replace the mobile home. The property is located at 3684 Benders Ferry Road, Lot 6, Cedar Creek Heights, Group A, Parcel 17, on Wilson County Tax Map 28. The property consists of approximately 24,900 square feet and is on A1 agricultural. We'll get recommendations now on 4123.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant, David Heimbach, is requesting a variance from the road frontage requirement of 50 feet and a variance from the lot width requirement of 125 feet. The zoning ordinance states that no building shall be erected on a lot which does not continuously abut at least one public street for at least 50 feet. The lot must be a minimum of 50 feet in width to the building setback line, and dwellings are not served by a public sewer system. And where dwellings are not served by a public sewer system, there should be a minimum lot width of 125 feet at the front building line. The property owner has stated that this portion of Bender's Ferry Road was moved in the 70s, causing his parcel to no longer touch the public road and creating a small parcel to the west of his property. Staff spoke to the Wilson County Road Commission, and we were unable to confirm that information as the change predated their records. However, this is an older lot of record, with a lot being created on June 6, 1958. Therefore, staff can recommend approval.
Who's here to represent 4123 Heimbeck? Yes, sir. You want anything you'd like to tell the board?
No, sir, I've just been,
If you would, please step to the podium, excuse me. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
David Heimbach. I'm at 549 Lone Oak Road over in Claypool. So my family's owned this property since the early 90s. And we had no idea that there was a variance needed, so I'm glad y'all approved it, so we can go ahead and get started upgrading this property.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant?
And you are replacing an existing mobile home, is that correct?
That's correct. We're putting in a lake home next to it, and then I've got renters in there until April, and then after April, we're getting the mobile home out of there, because the new existing home we're building is 20 feet from the existing mobile home, so we obviously don't want them right next to each other.
Who owns the little parcel between you and Bender's Ferry?
So when the road was moved, it was moved because the lake was backing up and flooding the road. So they moved the road over about 15 to 20 feet, built it way up to keep the lake from flooding it, and that left a little, as you can see on the map back there, a little banana-shaped thing that was originally owned by the boathouse, which is across the street. And now it's just a bluff going straight down where they built that road up. So the county comes out and mows it maybe twice a year, but other than that, that's what it is. It's a big, I don't know, it's a big hillside is what it is.
Okay. Any other questions from the board for the applicant?
The parcel is still indicated as being owned by Cedar Creek Partnership or whomever owns the boathouse across the street.
And so the original driveway, when my father purchased this property back in '92, the driveway was already there for his permit that he pulled to build a log home. Then we pulled another permit back in, me and him pulled it back in '03 to put the mobile home in and put in that drive. And then recently I joined the drives together to make it a big drive so people can pull in and out a lot easier off the main road because people don't slow down on Bender's Ferry. So, and then when I went to pull my building permit for the new lake house, that's when I found out about this variant here.
I'm just thinking, would it be possible that they would quit claim you a deed to that little piece of land there where then you would have road frontage, or is that?
I was asked that question, and then I was told by the permit department that I would have to purchase that property, then I would have to have a surveyor come in and resurvey the entire property. I went through that process trying to buy all the property behind me, and it was a $10,000 project. So I decided to go this route first just to get a variant because the driveway's already there. We're not expanding anything.
Right.
It's already there.
But is there any reason that this lot would not enjoy a grandfather exemption?
No, I don't think so, sir. I think
Okay.
it should,
Okay.
based on the date of the creation of the lot.
If the board doesn't have any other questions for the applicant, does anyone else here wish to address 4123? Okay. If not, then I'll close the public hearing and turning to the board for a motion or discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve case 4123 based on staff recommendations and testimony given.
I have a motion to approve 4123.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion by the board.
Was that Justin?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's no discussion, then all in favor of the motion as stated, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Now, may I ask a question? When can I go pull my building permit? This is the last step.
You may see the staff after this meeting.
Thank you so much.
You can proceed to the building inspector's office to get it.
I'm sorry.
you can proceed to the building inspector's office to get it with the variance. Just explain to them that you received the variance that was
But I
necessary.
have to wait till after the meeting.
You can probably go over there now.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
so much, guys.
Thank you.
Okay, our next case is case 4124.
You're welcome.
Kevin McCowan, on behalf of Bernie McCowan, is requesting an approval to make an addition of 3,000 square feet to an existing cabinet shop. The cabinet shop was approved by the board on August the 21st, 2015. The property located at 1582, I guess that's Gull Road? Will Road, excuse me. Lot 8, Lily Jenkins, Rutland, parcel 12 on Wilson County Tax Map 98. The property consists of 3.7 acres and is zoned R1 residential. We get staff recommendations on 4124.
Okay. Applicant is requesting an addition of 3,000 square feet. The zoning ordinance states that home occupation should utilize no more than 25% of the usable floor area of all buildings and shall not require the alteration of buildings nor new construction. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval. If approval is granted, WEMA has noted that due to the size of the building and the type of business proposed, this project would need to comply with the 2021 International Fire Code for the business to operate to their safety standards. And I believe WEMA is here if you need to speak to them about that.
Well, they're here. If they want to testify, they may. With
Yes.
the applicant, who's here to represent 4124? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. State your name and address for the record, please.
Kevin McCowan. It says on behalf of Benny McCowan, that's my mother.
Mm-hmm.
1582 Will Road.
Okay. And what would you like to tell the board?
So we went through the zoning appeal, I believe it was 2015, and received permission to add a cabinet shop that you see in the picture there about the center of the property. My father, we started off as father and son business. He's since passed away a couple years ago. But we're looking to expand, mainly so I can stay there and kind of watch my mother as well. I'm kind of doing double duty. But we're looking to add kind of to the back and to that tree line that you see. Building matches the house. It doesn't look like an industrial building. It's a vinyl sided asphalt shingles. Building's completely climate controlled. The doors stay closed. There's no outside dust collection or anything of that sort. So
How big is the building now?
it's currently 3,000 square feet.
And you want to add another 3,000?
Yes, sir.
That's what-
I realize that sounds large, but on the cabinet shop, we assemble everything. It's on in the building. So we do stuff like this. As you see, it takes up a lot of space and then machinery and storage as well. So we used to have a outbuilding that set there, so lawnmowers and stuff were still stored there. So we're trying to make room for all that. There's no additional buildings outside on the site.
What do you have as far as employees or workers?
I've got one full-time and a couple of subcontractors.
How many trucks?
I've got one box truck and one 16-foot trailer. It should be in the pictures that they came out and took.
This is,
Both of those items are unmarked. They're just white.
but this is built on residential?
The zoning, yeah, we are in a residential area.
I mean,
But we don't have, we're not set up for walk-in clients. We have none of that.
but when
So
a
we
building,
don't
when
have
a,
any signage either.
when a business gets to be this size, shouldn't it be in a commercial or industrial zone?
That's your take.
I mean, that's what, the ordinance actually says this is supposed to be taking place in your house.
Well, we
I
got
understand the
approval
board
to do
gave,
that.
I understand the board gave you permission to have it, outside, but,
Right.
other questions from the board for the applicant? If there aren't any other questions from the board for the applicant, does anyone else here wish to address 4124 Kevin McCowan, Cabinet Shop? If not, then I'll close the public hearing for 4124. Turn it to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'm just a little confused that this big a building right here is built on residential land and was approved.
Yeah, it was approved 8 years ago.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just a little confused with
Well, I don't know why Perry did that, but he was here.
He's a sensible man.
Anyway, today we're here to consider an additional 3,000 square feet. So, do I hear a motion?
that. I'm gonna make a motion that we deny this.
Have a motion to
The staff
deny
recommendation, yes.
4124 based on staff recommendations. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Now, discussion on the motion is stated. If there is no discussion, all in favor of the motion as stated, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you for coming.
Okay.
Okay, our next case is case 4125, Jams Investment Group LLC, requesting to use the property for dog grooming and doggy daycare on C3 Commercial Zone property. The property is located at 5780 109 North, is parcel 45 on Wilson County Tax Map 33. The property consists of 1.78 acres and is on C3 Commercial. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4125.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting the use of the property to be established, or to establish a dog grooming and doggy daycare.
Hold on just a minute, Tom. No, hold on just a
Am I in the
second.
wrong place?
I'm confused.
I think it's a misprint.
I'm on 4125, and my next staff recommendation goes to 4113. Am I missing
I
something?
think it may just be a
I
misprint.
think it's a misprint. It says it was Tim Stockton representing.
Yeah, that was
Stockton
another,
Building.
that was another meeting.
I think the title was just wrong on the
Okay,
recommendations.
I apologize for the typo, but it is 4125 Jams Investment Group.
Okay, but the recommendation is corrected, the header is wrong?
Yes.
The applicant is wrong, the address and the case number, the address is correct, the case number and the applicant is wrong.
So it's case 4125, Jams Investment Group LLC is the requester, not Tim Stockton Building
Okay.
Corporation. And it is at 5780 Highway 109 North,
Okay,
just to be clear.
gotcha. Go ahead.
My apologies. The applicant is requesting the use of the property as a dog grooming and doggy daycare. Dog grooming and boarding facilities are not a permitted use nor a specified use on appeal in a C3 zoned area. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval. In looking at the zoning ordinance, those uses are more appropriately housed in C2, I believe, where veterinary clinic is a listed use. Beyond that, I don't have anything really else to add. The closest similar use listing in the C3 zone district is clinic. From my
Clinic?
perspective. Yeah, just a clinic.
Like, for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, whereas a veterinary clinic would many times house dogs or have a dog kennel associated with it.
Okay.
Which would be more appropriately, according to our zoning ordinance, listed in C2. They did attempt to request rezoning to C2, I believe, for that purpose and were denied. I think with the preference for them to come and try their luck with the Board of Zoning Appeals for the use.
You're gonna have to clarify that one for me. So they
They-
went
they-
for C2 and the commission denied them?
Yes,
But that was the appropriate location for this use?
yes.
And then somebody
They have the right to appeal.
unofficially?
Yeah. They have the right to appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals if they wish for the use.
Gotcha, okay.
In this, I got a quick, in this zoning, are there setbacks with a kennel? I know in some zoning there.
No,
No, there's
No,
no.
A1 would have the setback criterion you're talking about. A1 does allow dog boarding kennels on appeal, and there are facility separation requirements from adjoining property lines in that district.
But nothing in this.
No, sir.
In some of the zoning districts, you know, for instance, C3 is a little more intense than C1 and C2 or whatnot. In some of those definitions, it gives us the uses and it gives us the use on appeal, and it says, and in addition, the uses that are in C1 and C2 or the other. That's not the case here.
I don't believe so, but I'll look.
Well, if you want to look that up, let me call the applicant up and we'll get started. But I just want to make sure there's not a gotcha there. Okay, in regard to 4125, the Jams Investment, who's representing that case? Yes, ma'am. Will you come forward, please?
No, sir, there are no
There are no
provisions like
inclusions
that. There
here.
is any similar use, and this is on appeal, any similar use which, in the opinion of the Board of Zoning Appeals, will be in keeping with the uses permitted and the general character of the area in which it is located.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that is a provision you can consider.
Give us your name and address, please, ma'am.
My name is Shelley Cole. My address is 9120 Brooks Crossing in Mount Juliet. I am one of the owners here at this address. And Mr. Brashears is correct. We did submit a zoning change to the Planning Commission, which was denied. Speaking to the commissioner in the area, he was concerned with changing it to C2 and then everybody else being C3. And then that would kind of open doors for things like vape stores and things that may not be acceptable on that corner. We have put a business plan together for the doggy daycare. And if you know this area, right across the street is BJ's Trailer. Across in front of us is the fire station. Next to us on the same property is TMW Insurance Group and Cottage Realty. Within walking distance, there's a horse boarding farm across the street. And if you've been by there, the building looks 100 times better than it already did. We have a beautiful plan to put there on the corner. It was denied. We had no opposition from anyone here, nor have we from any of the community around us, which we have talked to everybody touching the property. So I can answer any questions that you have, but I would just ask that you would consider approving this appeal.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
in the interest of clarity, if everybody wants to turn around and look, this, I believe, is the insurance business that's on the same parcel of land. This is the facility or building that they're looking at using for the doggy daycare. Is that correct, ma'am?
That's correct, yes.
And
Do
this,
y'all plan to, it says doggy grooming and doggy daycare. Are you planning on housing overnight?
Yes.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant?
What's behind it?
A home. There's a
home right
tree,
here.
yeah, there's a tree line there. And it is my understanding that that home, that they also have dog boarding there. So they do some type of, not boarding, I'm sorry. Can't even think of my words right now. They raise dogs. Breed, thank you.
What would be capacity as far as the number of dogs on site, maximum capacity?
Somewhere between 12 and 21.
Other questions for the applicant from the board? If they're not, does anyone else wish to address case 4125? Okay, if we don't, I'll close the public hearing in regard to 4125. Turning to the board for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody else? I didn't ask, or did you ask if there was anybody else here on this one?
I did.
I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
I did. You blacking out down there?
I am.
Anyone, excuse me, you got me mixed up now, Tom. Turning to the board again, does anyone wish to make a motion in regard to 4125? Okay. I'll move to deny 4125 based on staff recommendations. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Discussion by the board. If there's no discussion, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. The ayes have it. Thank you for coming. All right, our next case is case 4126. Randy Berger, representing Midway 840 LLC, requesting a variance of 160 parking spaces from the requirement of 480 parking spaces. The variance will allow 320 parking spaces. The property is located at 1815 Couchville Pike, Lot 1. Midway 840 is parcel 83 on Wilson County Tax Map 138. The property consists of 53.65 acres and is on C4 commercial. We get staff recommendations now on 4126.
Mr. Chairman, this is a bit of a complex request. I may have to defer to my staff to help explain it, but the applicant is requesting a variance at base of 180 parking spaces from the requirement of 506 parking spaces for a 630.
Hold up. I got 160 on my notes on the request,
Yeah,
and you've
and
got 180 on your recommendation.
Yes, that's because it's a complex request, and we had to remath it
So
several
it's
times.
180?
Yes.
Okay.
So the applicant is requesting a variance of 180 parking spaces from the requirement of 506 parking spaces for a 633,410 square foot warehouse and distribution facility. In 2021, this facility was granted a variance of 500, or a variance to have 500 parking spaces rather than 506. And that was again done by the Board of Zoning Appeals in 2021. The applicant would like to seek a second parking variance to allow 180 car spaces to be converted into truck parking spaces, as the building's occupant has less employees than the required employee parking spaces. This would leave 320 car parking spaces. The zoning ordinance states there at present, which this has been a change since this came before the board, the zoning ordinance at present states that there must be one parking space for 1,250 square feet of gross floor area. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval. Chris, what would the current parking requirement require for a warehouse this size?
Current one would be 506.
It would allow 506 spaces.
The current parking requirement would require 506. They currently had a variance that got them down to 500. That original request at the time, the parking requirement required 1,246.
So for the benefit of those who weren't here, several years ago, we had a requirement that was much more stringent as far as the number of spaces are concerned. We required many more spaces per square foot.
And it didn't always make sense, given the scale of the buildings
And
we
since
were
then, that
encountering.
has been revisited and the commission has adopted a new formula for our ordinance.
That's correct.
And based on that new formula that's in place today, this warehouse would have to have, instead of 1,000 somebody, it would have to have 506 spaces.
Yes.
506.
And they currently have how many?
They have a variance to have 500 on site. They have 517, I believe.
So they have 517, they need 506. Now,
Well,
just for my own clarification, why do they need a variance to park a truck in lieu of a car?
we don't have any requirement for required truck parking spaces in warehousing. We have a requirement for employee parking, which would be in car parking spots. Now, yes, I believe employees could park in truck parking spots if it got to that.
But the truck parking is generally much longer and may take up 2 to 3 parking spaces of length. So you're actually, what they're asking you to do is convert them to truck parking spaces, but in doing so, it's effectively cutting down on the total number of spaces. That being said, they have a tenant, which is arguably a better position to be in asking for a variance than when they came up here before, back in 2021, when it was simply a speculative request.
But just so everybody's aware, the reason we're so sensitive about employee parking spaces is because of a problem that we had down there in years past with employees parking on the road and down people's driveways and in places they should not have been parking.
Yeah, and it may take some acrobatics, but if let's say this tenant left, I know I've heard the chairman talk before on previous requests that we'll let you do these as truck spaces with the understanding that if you ever have the need, you're going to need to convert some of these back to automobile parking spaces. So I think if this tenant left and you got another tenant that was more shift heavy with employees, you could always have that discussion at that time.
I may have said that,
Yeah,
but having that discussion and making it happen is two different things.
it is. It's an acrobatic trick a little bit in
Okay.
terms of paperwork and
All
everything
right,
else.
we'll move forward now. 4126, you read the recommendations. Who's here to represent that case? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Randy Berger, 1815 Couchville Pike, on behalf of Midway 840.
And what would you like to tell the board, sir?
So the request, as Mr. Rushier stated, the original request was based upon a spec building where we reduced it to 500 spaces. We currently do have a tenant that has built out the space, and as part of the submission with this package or with this request, we verified that their max employees for any one shift is 72 employees. So even though we'll have 320 parking spaces, our max need at any one point in time would be 72 parking spaces. I also want to note that the parking spaces that are currently in place that equal the 517, they are in the trailer court, and they are striped for vehicle parking spaces. The request was to convert those 2 trailer spaces, and it's purely a striping exercise versus actually eliminating parking. So on the front end, if we were doing this under spec, we were eliminating pavement, I could see that as being a larger concern. With this situation, we're actually just requesting to change the striping during the tenant's occupancy for the next 5 years.
But this variance would run with the property. You know, it would be there forever.
Understood. And typically with these tenants, and part of, I know what he's saying with it being a discrepancy with these large buildings, the primary use for these buildings is a more storage or distribution type setup. With these types of buildings, unless you see more of a pharmaceutical or a mass manufacturing, you typically won't even reach the 320 parking spaces. So I understand that reducing it is a request that goes beyond, and I respect the efforts that were put in by the commission to work through to the 1,250 spaces per, or 1,201 space per 1,250 square feet. But for this particular facility, and I believe for several other facilities in the area, it's this would be sufficient parking with 320 spaces. I also want to
It might be sufficient today, but would it be sufficient 5 years when this is a manufacturing facility? If it is.
Understood. And yeah,
I don't doubt you understand it. I just
yeah,
want to know, what are you saying? Would it be sufficient or no?
I wish I had that crystal ball, with all due respect. But it's
Because you've gone from
Yeah,
1,000 to 500, now you're wanting to go to 300, and that's that's 30% of what was originally required.
yeah, the 320 spaces. I will note with each tenant, no tenant wants to run into the situation that you've mentioned where people start parking down the roadways or on the sides of areas that start impacting the neighboring streets or things like that. So
Don't you
Well,
think it's one thing for y'all to decide to park a trailer where a car's supposed to be if the car's not there, but it's something entirely different for us to approve and codify such a move?
understand the concern, but all I have today to present are the facts of what we've got with the tenant that's in place. I feel like the request for the one for 1,250 square feet is based upon
Well, you've got
a
that
best case
restriped. We don't have anything to keep them
scenario
from restriping.
assuming who's going to be going into the building. And the request today is based on the facts of what's actually in place. Looking at the request, you know, reducing it to the 320. We'll still have the pavement in place. We'll still have the area in place if we need to convert it back to parking spaces in 5 years.
Mr.
But if you have a need for the parking spaces that are required by the ordinance, which is the 500, and you still have a lot of trucks, you know, you're not gonna have enough space. You know, it's just not gonna be there. I mean, you've only got so much area. It's either gonna be parking cars or it's gonna be parking trucks. If you end up needing both, because you've built up with employees, you've got a lively event going on there, a lively business, then you could possibly just have a situation where you just physically don't have enough.
I understand the concern.
And Couchville Pike is not a great, you know, 4-lane road. It's pretty, it's
Agreed.
pretty
been-
narrow.
It's been widened for this project, but just in that area. The rest of it, I agree, is narrow. The only thing I can fall back on, I guess, to give you some assurance, is the fact that the owner is not the tenant. The owner is a developer, and they write into the lease structures of these projects what they anticipate that someone's going to maintain or how they're going to maintain and park on a facility. If they see a need that exceeds what the building and the site parameters allow for, then they either force them to purchase additional property for additional trailer parking, or they restrict them down to within those parameters.
What if
So,
the property is not available for purchase?
then the tenant doesn't work for the space? So I'm not saying that disrespectfully. It's something that the developers look through as they're slating each of these projects for a specific tenant. So if the space doesn't work for the tenant, then they have to look at other spaces that do. This particular space, it works for this tenant for the next 5 years, and based on the investment, most likely longer. But as far as changing it or looking at a variance, I mean, we're about 240 spaces less than what we're actually going to be using, or 240 spaces more than what we're actually going to be using. And with it just being a restriping change. But I understand your concern. If the variance is allowed, would it change later on?
Yeah,
With-
my experience is when these things get done, they tend to stay done. And normally our actions are perpetual with the title. The other members of the board have questions for the applicant.
Not, not necessarily. You say you've got a 5-year tenant. Maybe this is more for staff or the board. Could the board take action and put a 5-year?
You can. It's,
Is that how much?
it's not easily enforceable.
That was my next question.
In fact, probably when we would catch it is either when someone down the road complained or someone,
But at least at
came
that
in-
point in time, they would be in violation, would they
Yes,
not? Whereas
that's
if we
correct.
didn't put a 5-year and we acted on it, and they
Yes,
said, well,
that's correct.
you gave us a green light, but
that's
this way,
correct.
it would-
So if either someone complains or someone comes in requesting a change of some sort, because they realize that they don't have the
Right.
same provision this tenant does, if you pass it.
Other questions?
I will add, just for the standpoint, we don't really have anything to preclude them from parking across 3 parking spaces, a truck across 3 car spaces, nor are we going to necessarily be out there looking at how they've striped everything, unless someone raises a concern.
what
so-
would have happened if they just restriped without coming in here?
Well, they're technically in violation of the zoning ordinance because they've now
Okay.
got less parking spaces.
What would have practically happened?
Practically, unless someone raised the issue with us or we noticed it, not a lot.
And we could bring them back in here before the 5
Yeah.
years?
I'm sorry?
We could bring them back in here before the 5 years if they're in violation.
Yes, or we could bring them up for violation.
Back to the board,
And then they
right.
would have the right to appeal to the board.
If there are no other questions for the applicant, let me ask, does anyone else here wish to address this case? 4126, okay, we come up one at a time. If you would step back, sir. If you would come up one at a time and give us your name and address.
My name is Dennis Devine. My address is 3460 East Division Street, Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I actually work for CBRE Property Management, which actually works for the landlord for Midway 840. And I've been working with Randy on this project. And when you're all just talking about, when this would be caught, one of the things is normally annually we have insurance auditors that come on site on behalf of the landlord that actually insure the building. So that's something they would notice and they'd be like, okay, is everything in terms of the government specs on the building with the requirements, are we within those requirements? So that's probably something that would normally be caught during an annual insurance audit, which is why Randy's gone through the process, and we're going through the process on behalf of the landlord to make sure we do everything right. And like you said, we could have just hired a striping company, come in and just restriped everything, but we prefer to do everything per the book, which is why we're coming to do this variance. And also very similar to this building, there are other buildings that are similar in size and scope of this building that don't actually have the area. And I think that's the main thing I just want to point out, is that we're not removing any parking, we're just restriping. That's the main request. And Mr. Neal, like you were saying, I don't believe the landlord.
Wouldn't that be more correctly, you're not removing any paving,
No.
you're just restriping?
No,
Not
actually,
You are, technically you would be removing parking
We're
numbers.
moving spaces,
Yes.
but we're actually not moving square footage in terms of stormwater, rainwater, that end, in terms of monitoring that. All the impermeable structures are still going to be in the same spaces. Approach and entries to the buildings aren't changing. It's basically just they're restriping. And the way the markets are looking right now, Geodis is a very interesting tenant. That's our tenant who's moving in. The landlord, in terms of where you're thinking about warehousing today, warehousing in 10 years is going to be completely different, because the automation right now that's coming on board, especially with this tenant, is they require a third of the employees like an Amazon warehouse. And I actually worked within the Amazon warehouse in Lebanon. And whereas you have multiple shifts of 300 to 500 employees going out, this particular building's only going to have 2 shifts. So you're going to have a lot less traffic, a lot less volume, because they're using technology. So 5 to 10 years from now, if this is a warehousing facility, we're probably not going to see the need for the volume of parking as we would say manufacturing facility. And like Mr. Neal said, if this needs to be done on a 5-year, and then we come back, if the tenant changes on behalf of the landlord and we need to restripe it back to the original 517, that's something we can work with the landlord to make sure that happens.
Instead of these predictions of what may or may not happen, let's look at what we as a board can consider.
Mhm.
We've already given you a 50% variance. 50%. I mean, you would have had to have gone out and bought considerably more land if you hadn't got that original variance. Now-
Did we give that, or did the county zoning change?
No, sir. You granted a variance.
Okay.
In the interim, because of the nature of the scale of the buildings out here, and some outcry from the Board of Zoning Appeals to look into the parking standard, we looked into the parking standard and changed it and got the county commission to approve it, in hopes that we wouldn't have as many variance requests for parking on such large-scale buildings.
So now, instead of going out and acquiring more land, or the tenant locating in another place, you say, well, we don't want to do that. We just want another variance. So we don't have to acquire more land. We don't have to go through any more expense. This tenant doesn't look elsewhere. This would just fit if we can get more variance. And, that's really what you're in front of the board for, not to talk about what may or may not happen, because it may or may not happen.
Yeah, I understand.
So is there any reason that we can consider, by hardship that's not of your own making, or any reason that the board may consider, that you would base your request on, other than you just don't want to do it?
I wouldn't say it's not that we don't want to do it, it's we want to be in compliance with the requirements.
But
So-
you want us to move the requirement to you. you don't want to bring the requirements you up to our standards. You want us to move the requirements down to where you are. Correct?
We're just, I understand what you're saying.
I mean, my point is, there's no basis for this request that the board can consider. Mr. Brashear, you disagree?
No, sir.
Okay. Board have any questions for this, this gentleman? If not, okay. Does anyone else here wish to speak to this guy? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Name and-
Donald Hennett. We live at 7198 North Lamar Road, which is in the left-hand side of the picture, the corner between the Rutherford County line. That's my home right there. The way we see it is the variance is just going to allow more trucks. The gentleman mentioned they widened Couchville Pike. They added a bare minimum turn lane, which does nothing for other than a couple of trucks. If you take away that many parking spots, you're adding that many more trucks that Couchville Pike does not support. No, he's not talking about removing paving, but if you remove people, you're just adding semis, you're adding more hassle, you're adding more trouble. The road just doesn't do it. It's not there, and it's just more noise. And then like you mentioned, sir, what's next? No private parking, all trucks? Then they're trying to force us out to buy my property, which isn't for sale. When you again mentioned the tenant purchasing more property in the future, it just looks trying to be a power move. If the space wasn't enough for the 1,000 parking spots he mentioned on the end, they should have bought more property to begin with, and not just try to push you around. Is the way we see it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else here wish to address 4126 Midway 840 Randy Berger? If not, I will close the public hearing on case 4126 and turn to the board for discussion or a motion.
Sir, can I say something?
Sure, come on. Name and address, please.
My name is Molly Suggs. The address of the property is 1710, which is directly across the street from the warehouse. And it is a very narrow road. I support what you've already pointed out and what this other gentleman has said. There's a very small strip of a turning lane there. And it's already a dangerous area through there. But if there's nowhere else to go, then yeah, you're going to start encroaching on these other people. My sister still lives directly across the street. And with that past development right there, it was horrendous in that neighborhood. But unless you add more unless, like you've already pointed out, unless you're increasing your land, I just support what you've already pointed out of the negativity of this move, and then what this other gentleman has said. That road does not support more traffic.
Ma'am,
Thank you, ma'am.
are you and your, you mentioned your sister's property, and I think your property, are they both up here on the north side of Couchville Pike?
That's
Couchville Pike,
yes,
so they're right in here?
yes, directly across that street, yeah, right there.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, let's try this again. Anyone else wish to speak? And if not, the public hearing on 4126 is closed. All right, to the board. Do I have a motion or discussion?
I'll just make a comment. It's not in the form of a motion, particularly like it maybe to the neighbors there. Understand the traffic and the trucks or whatever, but understand that they're wanting to do away with parking, which means probably less vehicle traffic, which could be less cars. So you could be trading, I guess, one truck parking for what in the future could be 2 more cars coming in there, if they were to reach capacity with the car parking. But that, I don't live there, so I don't know what's worse, a truck coming in every now and again, or 4 or 5 cars coming in twice a day. But I just making a comment. That's all that is. Go ahead.
I'd like to make a comment if I could.
Go ahead.
Being the former commissioner of that area out there, living right off Couchville Pike, that area is become absolutely industrial tractor trailer truck on Couchville Pike. 2-lane road. The only thing that they did do, I was involved in this warehouse being built, that is a turning lane. They didn't widen all of Couchville or part of Couchville, it's just a turning lane going into this area. I understand what you're doing, but it's not gonna be for me to go with this due to the fact that I know that any chance at all of more truck traffic being on Couchville is something that I've had to deal with a long time. I've seen it, and it's just something that it's just not good for the folks that live in residential area out there. It's not good.
Anyone else wish to make a comment or a motion? If not, in regard to case 4126, I move we deny the request based on staff recommendations.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no.
No.
And we have one opposed. 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Okay? Motion passes.
Who was the second?
Ms. Robinson. Okay, our next case is case 4127. Rebecca Schaefer is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. The property is located at 365 Canoe Branch Road, Lot 1A, Mike Newman property, parcel 13.06 on Wilson County Tax Map 23. The property consists of 1.57 acres, zoned A1 agricultural. We'll get staff recommendations on 4127.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting to use the property as a short-term rental. The property is located at 365 Canoe Branch Road. Staff has received a business plan stating how the applicant considers using the property. If the
Really?
use is granted, staff recommends that this business plan be made a part of the approval and put the applicant on notice that if they are to add any sort of structure or expansion to the use of the property, they will have to come back before the board for a plot plan submittal and revised business plan approval. The business plan does not state the maximum number of guests allowed per stay, nor how many bedrooms are in the home. If granted, the board typically approves 2 tenants per bedroom to make sure that the septic system on the property can serve the intended use. Staff will need the PERC records or the original number of bedrooms in the home to designate a maximum amount of guests. The business plan does not state who the caretakers are or where they are located, but staff will note that the caretakers must reside within 10 miles of the short-term rental property. Airbnb and short-term rentals are a use permissible on appeal in the A1 zone district. Given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff can recommend approval with the above request for additional facts being provided. And the board typically grants first-time approval for short-term rentals for 1 year. That's directly a result of the Board of Zoning Appeals criterion for a bed and breakfast or short-term rental, which states that it's to be approved for a finite period of time. And just traditionally, y'all have approved the first request at a year. If the board approves the request, the applicant will have to make their contact information available to WEMA, Building Inspector, and the County Sheriff's Office. My recollection in doing field review on this one, if I'm not getting mixed up, is that the applicant lives in the home next door to it.
So this is a home, and they're wanting to rent out a building that's an accessory?
No, I believe it's another home on an adjacent tract.
Okay, we'll find out. Okay. Who's here to represent 4127? Yes, ma'am.
Rebecca Schaefer. I live at 355 Canoe Branch Road. The property in question is 365. My husband and I reside to the right of it on this photo here. It is a.
You live.
That is correct. That is
You live
correct.
there, and this is the
Correct.
So are
structure they
you
wish to
renting out, wanting to rent out the one in front there?
The one that's highlighted is the one they're wanting to rent out, I believe.
Correct. That's correct. And we have no intentions of changing the structure. It is a 3-bed, 2-bath home. And yes, we do intend a 2-person per bedroom. Permit for septic is a 3-bed per records.
So it'll be 6 people.
Correct. Maximum.
Okay. Questions for the applicant from the board? If not, anyone else here wish to address 4127 Schaefer? And if there Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
I have a concern about any short-term, stays right there. You can't see in the picture on their back property line, there's bluff about 30 foot tall right there. I don't know if they have a fence or not. Well, let's start with, my name is David Morrow. I'm at 195 Thomas Road. Our family's owned the property across the road since like 1870. In my opinion, there's been way too much development. I mean, Miss Lackey, I don't know if anybody's here to represent her. There was a rental house down the road from her. She was robbed at gunpoint. And now you're talking about making short-term rental for different people being there every other week or something. I don't know what to say, but I oppose this. If she wants to rent it out, fine. But there's a safety concern about her back property line because we've owned that across the road. There's been several people jump off the bridge. If you wanted to go there to commit suicide, this would be the perfect place because you're dropping off of Brock Bluff to the water. If they want to rent it out to somebody, fine, but a short-term rental, I would adamantly oppose it.
I appreciate it, sir, but the ordinance does allow it, if it meets the criteria.
There's no safety concern about a property line on the back going up to that bluff?
Don't think so. Not as far as the use is concerned. Not anything that we have jurisdiction over.
Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address 4127? Okay. If not, then we will close the public hearing, and I'll ask the board for any comments or motion.
Mr. Chairman, just for
Yes,
the
sir.
record, during testimony from the applicant, we discovered that they were proposing 6 people maximum, and that the caretaker for the property is in fact the applicant who lives next door.
Okay. And I noticed in the application, there is the document from the groundwater folks that state it's good for a 3-bedroom, and I
Yes.
think that's what's there.
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. Do I hear a motion from the board?
Motion to approve per recommendation.
I have a motion to approve from Mr. Manning, second by Ms. Robinson. Let me offer an amendment that we make the business plan part of the approval, that the approval is for a maximum of 6 guests, and the approval is for 1 year. Do you accept that, Mr. Manning? Ms. Robinson?
Yes, sir.
Is there anything in the business plan about quiet hours? It may be there, but I haven't seen it.
I don't know.
I didn't.
Let me
I don't
add,
think so. You
let
might
me,
wanna add that.
let me add to my amendment that quiet hours shall be 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. You okay? Okay. So the motion is to approve quiet time 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., 1 year approval, 3-bedroom or 6 guests max, business plan to be incorporated into the approval. So that's the motion as amended. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. The ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. Next case is case 4128. Lois Keith Neal requesting a refund of $5,000 for the adequate facilities tax and $1,050.56 for the building permit fee. The mobile home burned October 8, 2020. Property located at 8515 Stewart's Ferry Pike, Lot 6, Baskin property, parcel 42.05 of Wilson County Tax Map 116. The property consists of 6.97 acres, is zoned R1 residential. We'll hear staff recommendations now on 4128.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a refund of $5,000 for the adequate facilities tax and $1,050.56 for the building permit fee. The zoning ordinance states that when an existing structure has been destroyed or damaged by fire and the owner of the property presents proof satisfactory to the Wilson County Building Inspector of damage from fire, a refund may be considered if the building permit for the replacement structure is requested within 1 year from the date of the fire. This home was destroyed by fire in October of 2020, surpassing the 1-year time frame. Refunds, waiver, or reimbursements have typically only been granted in instances of failure to build or changes in circumstances resulting in lack of a constructed unit that would be required to pay the adequate facilities tax. Additionally, some waivers have been accommodated legislatively for fire or disaster replacement, and I believe that's what we're considering today, of an existing structure or moving of a historic structure, et cetera. Again, I think the question is, they're requesting a refund, but it's more than 12 months after the event that caused the potential replacement that they've not exercised.
Okay, so what was supposed to happen?
If within 12 months, if they had requested a permit and constructed it, they would not have been
So
required
the trailer
to.
that was there burnt.
That's my understanding.
Okay.
And they've got 12 months to come in and apply for a building
Yeah,
permit?
and if they do that, then there's no AFT required.
Okay. But they've already paid for it?
Karen?
The reason why they paid for it is they wanted to go ahead and get started with, get their permit so the mobile home could be moved to the property. So they could be in the process of getting the residents moved there.
Well, help me with-
That's why they went ahead and paid.
Help me with the time frame. The trailer that was there burnt when?
In October of 2020.
Okay, that's 3 years ago. And they paid for the adequate facilities tax when?
They just paid for it, September 29th.
Okay, so,
They paid for the adequate facilities tax and the building permit.
so 3 years ago, the dwelling burned. They had 12 months to come in and get it for nothing. That didn't happen. They came in 3 years later and paid for it so they could get started.
Yes.
And now they're here wanting it back. Is that,
Well, they paid for it, I mean, gave them the option of going before the board, and of course, they wanted to go before the board, but they.
when?
When they came in September.
Okay, recently.
Yes, the same day that they applied for the building permit, they applied for the application to go before the board. But they had asked if they could go ahead and get their building permit fee so they could get started. Pay the building permit fee and pay the adequate facilities tax, because they wanted to go ahead and get started where the home could be moved in.
Okay, I just was trying to get all this in my head. Okay.
Understand?
Okay. All right, who's here to represent 4128 Neal? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, I'm Willis Keith Neal. And the story behind it is, when the house burnt, I found out that Farmers Insurance in Mount Juliet had moved from one agent to another agent. And being a double wide, it was under his subsidiaries, and when I turned it into insurance, he's like, I haven't looked at the subsidiaries, your insurance has lapsed, and I have fought with them. I went back and forth with them, had no prevail, and I lost everything. Didn't get a dime for nothing. I had to pay a gentleman thousands of dollars just to put it in a dumpster. And when all that was done, I had to pay a plumber to fix the water lines and get the electric set back up for my shop. And in the end, I had insurance on my shop that covered outbuildings. It would not cover the trailer because it was a dwelling and not an outbuilding. So we lost on that front too. And I've had COVID a couple times. I've had pneumonia once. And it's taken me this long to adequately have the funds to go back and do this. And we paid it. We were apprised that this is an option. You know, I've owned the property. I've lived there since 1987. I have bought the property from my mother in 97. She passed away in 19. The house burnt in 20. And it's just been rough. It is what it is.
Okay.
And Mr. Neal, you paid the adequate facilities tax because the time had lapsed, but you're paying it under protest.
Yes, sir. I
That's-
paid it. The young lady apprised me that this
Yes.
could be an option. So, of course, you know, trying to get everything together and get everything put together.
That's the prescribed process for appealing a adequate facilities tax, is you have to pay it.
Okay. Does the board have questions for the applicant?
So you paid it 20 days ago?
Yes, sir. We have been working, trying with insurance companies and everything to get everything lined up, and of course, that didn't prevail. And we finally gotten to a point to have the funds to get back to this. And when I went and paid it, the young lady told me that, hey, this is the option, or this is an option. So, of course, I filled out the paperwork, but I wanted to stay on track with what we were trying to do, so we went ahead and paid it up front. It is just, you know, between COVID and everything else, this is just what my funds have allowed me to do.
Tom, I have a question for you maybe. The fact that he paid it shouldn't be shouldn't weigh into this, should it? Like I said, he paid it under protest,
Well,
so that,
he has to pay it to appeal it
right, so that's what I'm
by
saying.
by the letter of the AFT. Is that correct, Mike?
That's correct.
Yeah, so, the issue is it was paid a couple of years late.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
From what I understood, if I would have paid it within 12 months, or if I would have went and got, which most people, you know, they turn in their insurance, they get their claim money, and they start building back. I didn't end up with that result, and I'm trying to do it a little bit later because of just what all happened.
If he had came in within a year, he would not have had to pay the
Right, I
adequate
understand.
facilities tax, and he would not have paid the building permit fee unless the home was larger. He would pay the difference between
Square
what was
footage.
existing.
And you'll notice there's no recommendation from staff on this because this is strictly the purview by the letter of the adequate facilities ordinance of the board to decide.
So the ordinance gives him a year. And the question to the board is a year enough?
Do we want to give him more? Or
Okay.
do we want, he's used 3 years.
And if 3 years is the forgiveness, then what about 4 or 5 or 2?
Case by case, depends on the situation.
I think
guess.
it's a resolution. I don't think this resolution is in the ordinance. It's a resolution that was.
It's part of the
passed.
adequate facilities tax criteria, I think.
It is part of the adequate
Yeah.
facilities tax resolution.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
All right. If there aren't any other questions from the board for the applicant, then does anyone else here wish to address 4128 Neal? Okay, we'll close the public hearing and turning to the board for any other discussion or motion.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we approve this case, based on the testimony given. This gentleman, implied he had hardships, with insurance, and so based on that, the testimony given, I move that we, approve this case.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion?
I just want to make sure you're aware, I believe this is for refunds both of the AFT and his building permit fee.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed vote no, and I vote no. So the motion passes 4-1. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next case is 4129 Doug Myhand on behalf of Ricky West, requesting a variance of 5 feet from the northwest side setback requirement of 10 feet and 4 feet from the variance from the setback requirement of 8 feet between structures, and a variance from the lot width requirement of 125 feet. The lot is 120 feet in width. The variance will allow the proposed detached structure to be built back on the existing concrete and be 5 feet from the northwest side property line. The 4 feet between structures. The property is located at 921 Green Valley Road, Lot 36. Bell Lake is Group D, Parcel 18 on Wilson County Tax Map 31J. The property consists of 31,000 square feet and is zoned R1 residential. We'll get staff recommendations now on 4129.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a variance of 5 feet from the northwest side setback requirement of 10 feet, a 4-foot variance from the setback requirement of 8 foot between structures, and a variance from the lot width requirement of 125 feet. Upon site review of the property, staff was made aware of 2 hardships on the property. First, the request will allow the applicant to rebuild the damaged garage on the existing concrete slab. The garage was built prior to the applicant purchasing the home and was built without a building permit. The second hardship, staff noted, is that the garage backs up directly to a creek, limiting the applicant's ability to move the structure. Staff will also note that this is an older tract of record, with the lot being created on May 7th of 1964. Therefore, staff can recommend approval. I don't know if you can see, but when we got out there, we got an eyeful of a lot of different issues that were afoot here. This, I believe this is the garage in question, and a tree landed on it as a result of a recent storm. And I was with the owner who wanted to show me, but I felt somewhat uneasy standing inside the existing structure because of how damaged the structural beams were. Secondly, there is a large, what appears to be blue line stream that I presume is running all season just behind the structure. He doesn't have a lot of room to move it around or anything else. So I think the variances are warranted, in addition to the fact this is an older lot of record.
Okay. Who's here to represent 4129? My hand.
Yes, sir.
Name and address, please.
Doug Myhat, 400 Burris Road, Mount Juliet, Tennessee.
And what would you like to tell the board, please, sir?
Yeah, Ricky's son's a friend of mine. They called me about fixing this garage that the tree fell on. It's crushed. All the 90% of the trusses are crushed in it, and it's shifted it off of its foundation. And I came in thinking it'd be grandfather, and Karen told me that it wouldn't, so that's why we're here. It's no good anymore.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant from the board?
One more thing. He's got, that garage houses his water heater and his washer and dryer, so.
And I make one comment. I'm Ricky West. I'm over 921 Green Valley Road. I also use this garage. My oldest son is a paraplegic. We also store a motorized wheelchair and a mountain wheelchair in this garage. Had a wild cherry crushed this garage during last Sunday in July this year. And all I want is just get my garage placed right back where it's at.
Okay. Any questions from the board for the applicant?
The size is not changing, height's not changing, everything be laid out the exact same.
I just want it just like it was, where I can get back to being able to use it and take care of what I need to put in.
If there are no more questions from the board, does anyone else here wish to address 4129? My hand. Okay. If that's the case, then we'll close the public comment, turn to the board for further discussion or a motion. And based on staff recommendations, I move that we approve 4129. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, not all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.
Okay, we have been meeting for an hour and 15 minutes. We're going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll be back to hear the other 3 or 4 cases at 10:25. So we're in recess till 10:25. I can have y'all's attention, please. We'll call the meeting back to order. Try to work through these next few cases. Our next case is case 4130. Rajanbin Patel is requesting a variance of 3 feet from the height requirement of 35 feet. The variance will allow the proposed house to be 38 feet in height. The property is located at 1516 Murfreesboro Road, Lot 4, Claiborne Subdivision, parcel 77.04 on Wilson County Tax Map 92. The property consists of 2.66 acres and is zoned A1 agricultural. We get staff recommendations now on 4130.
Mr. Chairman, the applicant is requesting a variance of 3 feet from the height requirement of 35 feet to top of the structure eave to be at 38 feet. Staff will note that upon site review, the home has already been built to the 38-foot height prior to requesting a height variance. If approval is granted, staff recommends that the name of the property owner listed on each parcel be made the same so that the property assessor's office can properly map the property. This would be done through a title attorney to combine the deeds. The property has been combined via plat, but the deeds for the property still have them separated. Staff will also note that WEMA recommends that a residential structure this size have a sprinkler system installed for fire safety. And I believe that's regardless of the height issue. It's a 19,000 square foot residential structure. The zoning ordinance states that no principal structure shall exceed 3 stories or 35 foot in height. This is not an older tract of record, with the lot being created on February 28th of 2022. Therefore, given the language in the zoning ordinance, staff cannot recommend approval.
What's the date of the building permit? Anybody know?
It was dated August 31st of 22.
Okay.
Wait, I think that was an error on our part. It was applied for in 23.
Gotcha.
I think.
Okay, that's fine. Who's here to represent 4130 Patel? Name and address, please.
Hi, Krishna Patel, 829 South Cumberland Street. Ranjanben is my mom, and my dad's back here, Manharbhai Patel. This is our family home. My parents built it about 30 some odd years ago, lived in it, born and raised here. And as we grew and my sisters moved out, I got married. We needed a larger home to accommodate our growing family and my wife, my parents, and so we tore down our home that my parents built, and we are building this home. And we are already framed up. We were not aware that there was a ridge height. So the primary structure is pretty much predominantly 95%, 90% is a one-story home. There's a couple of storage spaces on the second floor. Particularly underneath this ridge height, it's one floor with a loft area that does have stairs going to it. So there won't be anybody above a 12-foot surface. Even if you were to access the attic, you'd probably be at about 14 feet tall. You won't have access to the portion of the ridge above 25 feet. The ceiling and I guess what we call the great room is 25 feet tall. And we'll have some HVAC air handlers in the attic at 13, 14 feet tall, and some service walkways, but you won't be able to access anything above that. So we feel like we would, since we have already framed it and it was brought to our attention that we're a few feet too tall, we definitely are hoping and requesting the small variance. Because it is in the airspace, we don't feel like it'll harm the code. We're not encroaching on our neighbors or anything. We feel from a life safety perspective, we won't have anybody, 3 floors up, physically standing, sleeping, anything of that nature. So it'll only be a maximum of 2 floors that anybody could ever get to.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Yes, ma'am.
It was in 22.
Okay.
It was
Gotcha.
just called, the height was called like in September of, September 29th of this.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. If the board doesn't have any questions for the applicant, so let me ask you, is there anyone else here that wishes to address 4130 Patel? Yes, sir. Come forward, please.
Daniel Cowan, Fire Marshal, Wilson County. I'm just here to answer any questions if you have it regarding the suppression system that we asked for.
Is a part of the, maybe this is for you or maybe for Tom, is a part of the height requirement zoning, is it because of fire trucks, ladder trucks, fire?
I can only go on my understanding since I've been here, and I've been here since 2001. My understanding is there was a 35-foot limitation in the zoning ordinance, and one of the primary reasons for that, over and above just trying to fit into the character of an area for residential areas, is the fact that for a long time the county had no ladder trucks as a part of their fire response service. They are in the process, I believe, of getting one. I don't think it's in yet.
We have a 107-foot ladder truck that was ordered out of Wisconsin, and it's in Nashville. It's been built. It's a custom truck, so it's built from the ground up. It's in Nashville right now, having equipment installed. So look at our Facebook page. They posted some pictures, I think, yesterday.
I don't do Facebook. When do you expect this truck to be in operation?
Probably within the next month or two. I mean, they got to build hangars and stuff like that. 107-foot ladder truck. We have a 107-foot ladder truck. It's used widely. We can use it for residential if we can get it up in there.
That was going to be my next question. How hard is it to access a driveway?
I'm also a fire inspector too. I'm a state fire inspector license. So when I'm inspecting a warehouse, for example, has to have a fire department access road around it. That road can't be obstructed. This structure, we may or may not be able to get that truck up in there.
Can't you reach it from the highway?
To get it set up. Could reach it from the highway, have to shut down 231, but if we laid in hydrant-wise, we'd have to lay in 500 feet of hose. The hydrant's on the opposite side of the road. 500, I measured it out on my maps.
Where did I see,
The variance,
WEMA recommends that a residential, it says WEMA recommends. Now, what code criteria, to help me with the code criteria on a residential structure that you require? But it doesn't say you require, it says you recommend.
the 2021 International Fire Code has fire flow requirements. So we have subdivisions and whatnot going in, those plans go through the planning. I get a planning packet and I review them per fire code. A lot of those neighborhoods starting to come in. And that was adopted March 20 of this year. So when neighborhoods go in, we look at them, check the fire flow.
So does their building permit predate the March 20 date, March 23 date?
It does.
It would, yeah.
It does. So-
Yes.
I didn't receive the plans, though. I haven't received anything, so I don't know.
Yeah.
if-
Please bear in mind that the position that Daniel is operating within is a fairly new position.
I'm bearing that. What I'm trying to
yeah.
get to is the recommendation says WEMA recommends. Doesn't say WEMA requires. It says
Gotcha.
recommend. I want to know if there's a code criteria you're basing the recommendation on.
I'm getting to it, sir. So, we talked about the fire department access road, going to directly to code criteria. I've got lots of other notes, but I'll skip directly to that. 19,000 square foot house. A fully involved 19,000 square foot house will require 6,333 gallons per minute to resolve the BTUs being created by a 19,000 square foot house. In general, that's our rule of thumb. Fire code, when sprinklers are installed, you can reduce the amount of water necessary by 75%. So when you sprinkle a house, the outside water coming in, if it didn't meet the criteria and you sprinkle it, you subtract 75% off. 75% deduction from that 6,333 that house would produce is 1,500 gallons per minute. The hydrants along 231 south of Blue Top hydrants, Blue Top hydrant produce 1,500 gallons per minute. So it kind of, it puts it in that criteria. As I mentioned, the closest hydrant, we'd have to lay 500 feet down the road. The hydrants are across 231, so without a sprinkler system, we'd have to lay and close 231, but we close roads and tear things up a lot, so we're not worried about closing the road down. Fire code calls for a GPM for a protected, the wood is protected with fire retardant material, 2,500 gallons per minute. If it's an unprotected, which it very likely does not have fire retardant on the wood, it's 3,750 gallons per minute at a regular.
I understand all that, sir, but what I'm asking you is, the International Building Code that this county has adopted, does it, okay, the codes that are in play, does it require these people to sprinkle that residence?
Yeah, so we adopted the Appendix C that has to do with fire flow requirements. This does not meet fire flow requirements.
Is it because of the 3 feet or the 19,000 square feet?
So I didn't receive these plans, so when I receive a height variance, because years ago when the height variance come in, our ladders were only 35 foot tall, ground ladders. So the ground variance comes through us. So when something goes tall, I need protection on it, more protection. So
But my question is your recommendation for sprinklers because of the 3 feet extra height?
it's because of the massive structure. Look at the blueprints, it's an absolute maze.
So your recommendation is not connected to this request for a variance?
My recommendation was found when I got the variance request, I automatically requested blueprint. I needed a set of blueprints because I thought it was just coming about. I didn't know that.
Well, look, what concerns me is that these people may have received their building permit prior to the adoption by the county of this particular criteria. And second thing that concerns me is I haven't yet heard the IBC reference that says any residential structure over X number of square feet or whatever it says would require a sprinkler system.
IBC and IFC kind of go hand in hand with each other. We had also adopted IFC, and I'm a fire inspector. There are reference standards to other code that I can go to from the fire code. So if the fire code leads me to building code, I'm going to use it. So I don't wear the building inspector hat, I wear a fire inspector hat, a state licensed fire inspector. If the building code, if the fire code leads me to the building code, then I can use the building code at that point. There's very many references that go hand in hand with the two. I can't tell you right now if the little B is right beside, it's got a notation beside each code. If it refers to the building code inside my fire code, I can't tell you each specific one right now, those specifics, but in the fire code.
Because I would be interested in this from the standpoint of any residence that comes here, if it's 3,000 feet or 5,000 feet or whatever it is, whether we would require at this point a fire suppression of some nature on site or not.
If you design the neighborhood right, there and build 2,000 square foot homes, we would have enough fire flow. It's a massive.
But what's in,
massive
okay,
structure.
I think I've allowed us to drift off, and I've been part of the problem. What's in front of the board now is a 3-foot variance on the height. That's it. Now, here you have made a recommendation, but it's not a requirement, so I'm gonna just deal with the variance that's on the table, okay? So, appreciate your comments. If you don't have anything else, we'll try to move, see if anybody else wants to speak.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to address 4130 Patel?
I do want to make one comment about the fire truck. If you look at the picture, those are two concrete trucks right there. So where the ridge is, it's kind of to the left of that blue line, the 37 and some change ridge. And so I do believe a fire truck would be able to access in front and then access all the way to the back, given the nature of how big and long the concrete pump trucks, we are going to have a long, wide driveway.
What's the distance on the south side between the residence and the property line, roughly?
20 feet, I think, is set back.
I'm just wondering if we can get a truck down through there.
Setback inspection done.
Yeah.
And it was staked out by surveyors.
Okay, so you think it's wide enough to get a truck down beside the structure?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. If there's no one else that wishes to address the board, I'll close the public hearing and turning to the board for any discussion or a motion.
Is this going to be sprinkled? Is this home have a sprinkler system in it?
The architect did not call out for sprinkler due to it being residential. The architecture was under the impression that it was not a requirement.
You have an architect involved?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
He's not here today, but we do.
Based on what you've heard here, would you think it might be prudent to put a sprinkler system in there?
We have submitted the plans to the fire marshal, so I would probably lean on the contractor and then maybe some further discussion to see what all that would entail. We don't have a fire sprinkler plan in place, so we probably need to get.
Well, based on the
sprinkler plan.
testimony by the gentleman that was just up here, you know, if it water catch on fire without a sprinkler, there's probably not gonna be adequate water to contain it.
Right.
In a nutshell, that's what I gathered from that, but.
Right. I'm not sure exactly, I guess where our stance would be on that, putting on the spot right now, but we'd probably want to involve the architect and a fire sprinkler supplier, and maybe have them do a walkthrough of the house. And
In the past, sometimes when we've had these height variance requests, we've required that portion of the residence above the 35 feet be sprinkled.
Right.
But this is so minor, it's 3 feet, just the ridge. I don't know that that's worth doing. It sounds like they're gonna have to have other conversations anyway, so.
Mr. Chairman, my recollection of the cases that you've considered for height variance and then subsequently required sprinkling have been where there might have been a second floor occupancy.
I think you're right. I think you are right.
Whereas, according to the applicant's testimony, beyond storage, I don't think you've got any proposed
correct. We
second
got-
floor occupancy.
in the great room, there's a little loft area, like a nook.
Well, your variance request is for the height. You may want to have, or may be required to have additional conversations with the fire marshal.
Right.
Anyway, in regard to 4130, do I hear a motion? And I'll move that we approve the request in 4130. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Yes, sir.
Well, I was gonna have a discussion, but we're leaving the sprinkler system, we're leaving it out of it, I'm assuming.
Well, I don't, it's not part of his request.
Well, no, but it could be a part of nobody requests to have a sprinkler system, I don't
Wow.
think, when they have a height requirement, they request for a height requirement, and sometimes like Tom said, it may be because there's somebody, but this house is pretty big, you know, and it's
It is.
19,000 square feet.
And
If it ever starts going, it's gonna go like, the fact that it's only 3 foot of it's above 35 foot, the other 35 foot's gonna burn too.
But he's not here to request any action on a sprinkler system or not. His request
Nobody
is for...
requests an action on a sprinkler system.
Well, I mean, he could request us to give him a variance from the sprinkler system, perhaps. But we are not here to hear that.
Right.
We're here to hear the height variance.
I understand that.
Now, he may have to have, or may need to have, or may be required to have additional conversations with the fire marshal over the fire protection aspect.
Okay.
And his architect may want to be
But
involved.
the county zoning doesn't require a fire
No,
suppression.
The board has required sprinkler systems in certain height variance instances.
In the past.
As a condition of approval.
Right. That's what that's the point
Yeah.
I was wanting to make. We have required it in the past.
And-
I would think this house would be, size-wise, would be much bigger than the ones we required it on.
But if I could speak, but the witness said the 3 feet didn't have anything, the sprinklers didn't have anything to do with the 3 feet. It
Right.
had to do with the size of the.
Right.
And when
Which we're not here about.
when we
You're not
required the
here about that.
sprinkler,
That is correct.
it was for the occupied area above 35 feet.
Yes, sir. That's my recollection.
So if we were to do that here, we'd be running a sprinkler line up to sprinkle the ridge of the house, and I just don't know that that's
I
necessary.
don't know if we've had anybody that lived up above 35 foot. I don't know. I mean, I think everybody,
There was one.
Well, there's one that was, I believe it was a 3-story structure.
It was 42 feet in height or something.
And it was like 3 stories from the back, maybe 2
And the
stories from
third
the
floor
front. It was out on
may
Rocky
not have been
Valley
at
Road.
42 foot, but it was high enough that they were going to be occupying up in that.
right, all right, I'm good.
You can make an amendment to
No,
the
I'm
motion
good.
if you,
I'm
okay.
good.
All right. Motion is stated to approve 4130, and this is for the height requirement only. It doesn't have anything to do with any kind of sprinkler or anything of that nature. Motion and second. We've had our discussion. All in favor, vote aye. Aye. Opposition, vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank
Who
you,
made
sir.
the second? Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
And just for what it's worth, with regard to the fire inspector and the fire codes that have been adopted, we are still trying to accommodate those into our inspection and review processes. We do have Mr. Cowan receiving monthly packets from the planning commission for site plans and subdivisions and so on and so forth. This has brought to light, we may also need to make sure he's aware of items that come before the Board of Zoning Appeals, so we'll
Okay.
be moving forward with the discussion there.
I understand. Next case is case 4131. Mina Ragay, on behalf of Lusad Baluch, is requesting to use the property for automobile, body, paint, and mechanical shop. The property is located at 6140 Murfreesboro Road, Lot 3, Leslie Van Hook property, parcel 56.01 on Wilson County Tax Map 92. Property consists of 2.95 acres and is zoned C3 commercial. With staff recommendations on 4131.
Mr. Chairman, this is C3 zone property. As such, staff's opinion is that some of the improvements they're proposing might require a site plan to go before the Planning Commission. The applicant is requesting to use the property for an automobile body, paint, and mechanical shop, automobile repair and or service in conjunction with the current automobile sales is a listed use on appeal in a C3 zone property. Staff recommends deferral or denial without prejudice at this time until the property is cleaned up and we receive a more detailed site plan that might meet site plan criterion for the Planning Commission. That might also include some modifications to the landscaping, entranceways, and things of that nature.
Well, now, this site's not been previously developed under the C3 criteria.
It has not, but they have had car sales on it.
Not in my lifetime.
That's what it appears at present. When we
Well,
went out on
right,
the field review.
it's currently being used.
Yeah.
In the last 6 months or a year,
Right.
yes.
But at any rate, that's why we're requesting deferral or denial without prejudice so that we can get a site plan.
Okay, who's here to represent 4131? That would be Baluch? Yes.
Hi, Mina, Raji. And the
Mhm.
address is 1640 Murfreesboro Road, Lebanon, Tennessee, 37090. So we got the dealership license like 2 months ago. And one of the questions for the application was, are you guys gonna have a shop in the dealer? And we say yes to that, and we'll get the inspection, and the inspection is inspect the shop, and inspect the dealer, and then we'll get the license. And after that, we figure out we need another license to get like the shop set up. So I apply for the shop application, and they say, do we need another zoning letter for a shop? So
If I understand it correctly, what Mr. Bashir is saying, this site has not been developed under the C3 criteria before. It's just,
No, and honestly, I'm going by what we reviewed on site, which appeared that they already had cars there that may be marketed for sale.
right, they do, and it's
Yeah.
been there for a couple of months.
yeah, we just got the license for in a couple months, and already got the zoning letter for that, but they need another zoning letter for
Well,
us
but
to get the shop.
I'm assuming what Mr. Bashir is referring to is there is a landscaping requirement, a stormwater requirement, paving requirement, there are
Site plan.
a site plan, you know, commercial
Site
development requirements that would have to be met, correct?
Yes, sir.
So what has said here in his recommendation is that maybe we should consider, or you should request, that we defer this request until this information is supplied.
Okay, so I need to apply for this information again.
You need to submit a site plan for review by the Planning Commission, as well as this board.
Oh, okay, I already like bought my business plan. And
This
That's
is a
not
site
it.
plan.
This would be like, most of the time, people that submit a site plan would have an engineer or a professional license to do such work in the state of Tennessee to design the site plan, to show where you're gonna have parking areas, how much parking
so I
you're going to
already
have.
apply all that.
Yes.
For the
As,
the
as,
application.
as well as where you're gonna place your shop, building.
Okay, so for the mechanic shop, I already got the like a place for a shop there. And they already
Are
inspected
you
that.
suggesting that it's going in this building?
So the mechanic shop is gonna be inside the building, yes.
The
So-
main building or this building?
No, the main building. So
Okay.
I already got the place for the shop there, and we got it prepared. And when the inspection come for the dealer, they inspect that. So and also for the body shop.
In order to have a business at that
Okay.
location, you would have to submit and have approved a site plan. And
Okay.
there's a list of requirements of what the site plan has to show. And you have to do those things before you have your business operating.
And part of what I'm saying also is that there were some things on the property that raised a question for me as a zoning administrator about zoning compliance. Some of which had to do with debris on the property, some of which had to do with the construction of the gate into the property. If you'll look at our fencing and gate, or fencing and wall requirements, it typically has to be constructed of material traditionally used for fencing or walls, and this one appeared to be some form of door that was combined together, maybe garage door or other structured doors that were attached together. So I just had some questions on zoning compliance of the existing site.
So the question is, that Mr. Brashear has recommended that we defer this until the site plan is established, or you can request. It's
Okay, can I have like a sheet, like can I know what like the side plans and I need?
Yes,
like,
sir, I can
requirement?
get that to you. I won't be able to do it right this second, but we can get that to you if you come downstairs to the planning office, which is room 5,
Okay.
in the basement of this building. After the meeting, we can get you a copy of site plan requirements
Yeah.
and design review requirements, or building material landscaping requirements and public sewer requirements, so on and so forth.
So instead of acting on this request, we could defer your request until you submit a proper site plan.
And I believe by the district, he'll still need to come before the board based on the nature of the use he's requesting, which is the automobile repair in conjunction with auto sales. That is a use on appeal, if I'm correct. And so he'll still need to come to this board, but I'm just suggesting he may also need to go to the planning commission.
Okay. So is that what you'd like to do?
Yep.
Right. So the applicant has requested deferral, and I will move that we defer 4131 until such time as the applicant submits proper site plan and requests to be back on our agenda. Is that correct, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. And any discussion by the board? If not, all in favor vote aye. Aye. Opposition vote no. And the ayes have it. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, that's one of them. Our next case is case 4132. Douglas Manhart is requesting a variance of 12 feet from both the northeast and northwest side yard setback requirement of 20 feet and a variance of 15 feet from the rear yard setback requirement of 40 feet. The variance will allow the proposed house to be 8 feet from both northeast and northwest side property lines and 25 feet from the rear property line. The property is located at 938 Point View Circle, Lot 20. Port Spencer is Group A, Parcel 1 on Wilson County Tax Map 270. The property consists of approximately 28,900 square feet and is zoned A1 agricultural. We get staff recommendations now on 4132.
Mr. Chairman, this is the first of a two-step process that Mr. Manhart has applied for. One is getting these variances from the Board of Zoning Appeals. He also has some variances for consideration by the Planning Commission tomorrow. The applicant is requesting a variance of 12 feet from both the northeast, which I believe is this property line, and the northwest side property lines, as well as a and the typical setback there is 20 foot, so he's proposing to leave 8 foot to each of those two property lines, side property lines, and then a variance of 15 feet from the rear yard setback of 40 feet, which would leave 25 feet to the rear property line, which happens to be the property line with the Corps of Engineers. The zoning ordinance states that A1 zoning should have side yards no less than 20 feet in width and a rear yard of not less than 40 feet. However, this is an older tract of record within an older subdivision, with the lot being created in August 14th of 1962. There are also similar variances that have been granted and approved in the immediate neighborhood. Therefore, staff can recommend approval of these variances. I will point out that you'll notice the existing house is pretty close to the northeast property line, even by this aerial, but if you look at it on a plat, it's actually, I think, 8.26 feet. So the variance he's requesting is effectively the same distance on the northwest property line for the new structure he wishes to build as the existing house is. He's also asking to be roughly 8 foot from this property line, which the only structure he has that's anywhere near that distance right now is the existing detached garage. But I believe he's going to be building across both structures with his new structure as proposed. And I'll let Mr. Manhart elaborate.
Is this a variance for new construction, or is this a variance to?
It's a variance for new construction.
But this house is already there.
The house is already there. He's proposing to knock it down and build a new one.
Okay.
One other piece of information, there has been some litigation associated with this lot and the lake access to the, I guess that would be the northeast. At one time, this was proposed to be added to Mr. Manhart's property. There has been litigation on that, and my understanding is that litigation has closed with Mr. Manhart no longer having ownership of that parcel. Is that correct, Mike?
The litigation is concluded, and the question was about the county quit claiming part of that to him, and then we realized that it was not as it should be, and so that went to litigation, has been concluded, and the lake access continues to exist as shown there.
And the variance request is from his existing property line. So it would effectively be, the variance request would effectively be from the property line that now separates his property from the lake access on that side.
Would he be coming over on that access road?
Well, his driveway already does and has for a number of years, probably predates Mr. Manhart owning it.
Well, from our paperwork here, I've got this little hand sketch.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
this small one, but everything else has to do with the just the aerial. So we don't have a plan of the proposed house in the file.
Christopher, do we have it? I don't think so.
Building permit, do we?
Well, I was trying to see, just exactly on a real document how close everything's going to be. But anyway, so we've got your recommendation, Tom. Let me move on and get testimony. Case 4132, Douglas Manhart. Do we have a representative? Yes, sir. Name and address, please.
Doug Manhart, 938 Point View Circle, Mount Juliet.
And what would you like to tell the board, sir?
Well, I'm just looking for a variance to construct a new house. There are no plans yet until we decide what the building envelope is. We really can't develop a house, for the property. So, but we're just looking for like variance has been approved in the neighborhood in the past.
Most of these, hadn't we had some kind of a outline plan of the floor plan in the past so that we know what we were approving to?
I will say in most cases, yes. I won't say in all cases. I can think of some times where we possibly didn't have that, and we were granting approval based upon existing precedent in the neighborhood till kind of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we've allowed it here, we would allow it there.
Yeah, there was an approval,
15
I
feet.
think last month or the month prior for lot 38, which those same type variances were approved. Now, it has not been built on yet, but still the same. You're still dealing with the piece of property, whether we're tearing the house down or,
Does the existing house that you're tearing down, does it have variances with it or not?
It had one, yeah, at a 10-foot, well, actually, yeah, a 10-foot side setback.
On the northwest side,
Northeast.
on the side towards the lake access?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Was that for an accessory structure?
It was.
Tom, if you could, take your pointer and show us where the north, east, and northwest lines are for this discussion.
I believe this is gonna be the northwest,
It is.
and you're challenging me here, but I think that's northwest, and this is northeast.
Got you. Okay, all right. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? If not, do we have others here that wish to address this? Okay, come forward, please.
Just like to say first.
Name and address, please.
My name is Roy Atkinson, 940 Point View Circle, next door to Africa.
Mr. Atkinson, this is your home?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And what would you like to tell us, sir?
Well, I'd like to say that we're strongly opposed to this because you can see where his driveway ends. He's already into our property right there. I have to mow almost through a rock pile to mow down through there. But other than that, I'd like to say that who monitors this when it's laid out and he gets, if he does get the 8 foot or whatever it is, 12 feet, will any officials monitor that he doesn't go over?
The
Our building inspectors.
Foundation people,
Yes.
foundation inspection should catch that. They'll come measure the foundation.
Okay. And if he exceeds these parameters, what recourse do we have as adjoining property if he exceeds it?
You would make a complaint for a zoning violation, and then it would start through the process of how we handle zoning violations.
Okay.
And, either be remedied or potentially in the end up at the Chancellor's Court.
Okay.
Now, for obvious reasons, and I hope you understand what I'm about to say, why I'm saying it, I guess, if you sense or feel that such an encroachment is being done, if he had let's say he got these variances and got a building permit, if you feel that those encroachments exceed what he's been granted approval for, and violate either the setback or the variance allowed, it would be better if you made that complaint early during the process rather than late. So in other words,
Right.
I think for everybody's interest, don't let him get the house all the way built and then come by and say, oh, by the way, we think your inspector missed it.
Okay. Let's move on. I'm not sure
Okay.
Mr. Manhart's going to do right. Go ahead.
I have one other thing. When he has this variance and his house comes over that far, is there any stipulations where he can add landscaping or hardscaping?
The variance is for the structure.
He could add an HVAC pad. His building eve could encroach further, not across the property line in either case. And we have no restriction against him putting landscaping along the property line.
So he can cross that, he could cross
Or,
that?
or at the property line.
His eave could overhang the setback. His heating and air conditioning unit could overhang the setback.
Well, okay, well, what I'm talking about, just landscaping. Like
That could occur in this setback, yes.
That could occur right up to the property line.
That can occur whether he gets a variance or not.
Yes.
I mean, he can landscape up to his property line.
Yeah.
Anybody can.
Well, I understand that,
Yeah,
but
okay.
if he goes past that 12 feet, if he puts any landscaping over the line that he's allowed to have.
The line doesn't change. He can't get over on you.
He
Right,
can't.
he can't
We're just letting him get it. He just wanting to get his house closer to you.
Okay, that's all.
Yeah.
He can't compromise the property line
Yeah, no.
with anything.
All right, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Anyone else here wish to address 4132?
If I could, I would like to add one thing as far as the property line you know, the picture here is inaccurate as far as where the actual property line is. The corner of the house sits like, I think it's 8.26 feet, the front northwest corner.
The front existing corner does,
Correct.
yes.
And the landscape and the driveway go right to the property line, and that's allowed. You can take property or driveways or landscape, whatever, right to the
How close is the existing house to the property line?
8.26 feet.
On that front corner, I've
So
seen a
you're not
document.
necessarily, you're not wanting to encroach any closer with the new house?
No, sir.
But you could, your new house could be longer, paralleling that line. So whereas we just have a corner touching there, you know, the new house might be, that wall might, you know, come around and you might parallel that line.
Yeah, you can. I mean, yeah, as long as you stay within that 8-foot line. Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, if there's no one else here that wishes to address 4132, then I'll close the public comment period and turning to the board for discussion or motion.
Did we decide there's a 10-foot variance already on the west side of that property, correct?
On the
east
downhill side.
Okay.
Where that small outbuilding is.
And it was for that building, not for
For
the
the
house?
outbuilding.
I think I'm correct in saying that.
So there is not one for the west side?
It'd be for any structure because the outbuilding is in front of the back wall, so it doesn't meet accessory structure requirement.
Okay.
But he could build, even with that variance, it could have been, he could utilize it for,
The primary structure.
yes, sir.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve it.
Have a motion to approve 4132, and can we say that's based on staff recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay, have a motion to approve 4132 based on staff recommendations. Any discussion?
Second.
Excuse me, have a motion. Did you second?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion? Then all in favor of the motion as stated, vote aye. Aye.
Aye.
Are you voting? All opposition, vote no?
No.
Okay, let's have a show of hands. In regard to the approval of 4132 based on staff recommendations, all in favor, raise your right hand. I have 3. All opposed, like sign. Okay, motion passes with 3 in support and 2 in opposition. Okay, thank y'all. All right, now, Mr. Brashear, do you have anything else we need to take up?
I did pass out a document for y'all's consideration. I've heard back from a couple of you with regard to possible changes to the definition of home occupation. I am taking that to the Planning Commission tomorrow for additional discussion. I do not anticipate, did we run a public hearing for that one, Georgia, at planning? So it's not up there for official action by the Planning Commission tomorrow, but I do anticipate maybe having some discussion with them about it tomorrow, and it may come forward at some point. And this is,
Let's don't forget annual training in January or February. So if you'll get us a date, and I'm fine with you or Mike one teaching. I really don't care. I think we need to stay current on that though. If no one has anything else, we are adjourned.